Hello, my name is Ben Muldrow with Arnett Muldrow and Associates, and I'm proud to present to you the Conceptual Vision Plan for downtown Milford. This plan was created from September 14th through September 16th by myself, Randy Wilson, Principal of Community Design Solutions based out of Columbia, South Carolina, and Tom McGilloway, Principal at Mahan Reichel and Associates in Baltimore, Maryland. We'd like to start by talking about the market. Before we can make any recommendations about how Milford can grow, we need to have a firm understanding of the economic conditions and the resources that are available to us. For this market study, we defined a primary trade area of a 15-minute drive time from the intersection of Front Street and Walnut Street. In that 15-minute drive time, we have a population of just over 12,000 people, with a median age of 39.3 years, which is about a year and a half older than the median age, U.S. average age. In that same trade area, we have 4,940 homes, and over the next 4.5 years, we have a projected growth of an additional 4.5%. That is above the national average, and that kind of growth is something that we should be focused in on helping to capture, so we can take advantage of that as we try to create new economies and capture new money. Now, the next thing that we're going to look at is something that we call retail leakage. Retail leakage is a comparison between what the stores in an area sell and what the consumers in that area spend. We're able to look and see if money is leaving the area and in what categories it's leaving the area in. So, when you look at all the stores in that 15-minute drive time, they sell $965 million worth of merchandise and services. And the consumers in that area only spend $588 million. This automatically tells us that Milford serves as a regional attractor, bringing people into Milford from a greater region to spend their dollars. The overall total market gain is $376 million. Now, that looks like a really big number, but we need to dig into it a little deeper. If we look at the categories that lead retail gain, $186 million in car sales, $149 million in building supplies, and $61 million in gasoline. Obviously, none of these business categories are appropriate for downtown redevelopment and downtown retail. But when we add them together, it actually shows that even though we have a $376 million market gain, those heavy sales categories actually are showing a $20 million market leakage for experience-based business. Now, the other things that we need to consider as we think about the current environments in downtown is the conditions of the retail environment. This is a map of downtown. You see northeast front, northwest front, Walnut, Washington, and then south front on the bottom. All the gray spots are highlighted parking lots. And the problem is not at all that there's a lack of parking. There's actually a tremendous amount of parking for a downtown district. The problem is the consumer's motivation is not high enough to be able to park and walk. The sad thing is, if you were to park in the corner of the Washington Street public parking lot and walk to Dolce, it's roughly the same distance as it takes you to walk from the cat food to the dish detergent in Walmart. So we need to understand that as this district matures and changes, the consumer motivation is going to increase. But right now, parking capacity matches up with the parking needs. We need to see a shift in parking management and consumer mindset. Now, in addition to that, this map highlights the different uses that you might see. All of the green is retail. All the yellow is service or governmental, and purple is church use. Now, as you can see, there is not a lot of green. And that's a big thing that we need to make sure that we change. We need to create a higher sense of what we call retail density to be able to create a true destination. With that, we need to talk a little bit about retail math. Let's take a look at the numbers for a minute. The average rent in the United States for an 1,800 square foot retail space would be about $1,900 a month. That means that you have to sell almost $4,000 just to pay rent. Now, in addition to that, with utilities here on average running about $674 for that space, phone, fax, supplies, processing fees, you have to sell over $6,000 worth of merchandise in any 1 month simply to break even without even paying yourself a dime. Now, if you factor into that a small, modest salary, bringing you in line with one of the lowest paid teachers in the region, you now have to sell $12,000 worth of merchandise every single month simply to be able to bring a small salary home. What we need to do is we need to rethink space. We need to rethink how we use the space we have in downtown Milford. National average rent rate on office space is about $23, while the national average on retail space is about $13. So here we see a visualization of that 1,800 square foot space, bringing in $1,986. Now, what we're showing is if you understand those average rent rates, if you subdivide this space and make the back available for office at the average rent rate for office, then now all of a sudden your front retail only needs to generate $1,600 or $800 in rent to be able to cover that. If you split that space in half, you can now rent that front space out for $242 while still making the exact same amount of revenue. And then finally, if you create a small micro retail space, you can actually increase overall rent revenue while making the front available for retail. What kind of retail should go there? Well, based off the current numbers, right now one of the target focuses that we would like to attract, an objective here, is a sporting goods, toys, or outfitter store. We have about $6.2 million leaking in this category, which is more than enough to create a local sporting goods store right downtown. Next, a huge category for us, clothing. We're leaking $11.6 million in clothing stores, everything from children's clothing, family clothing, women's, men's. So what we really want to see here is we have an objective to attract 3 downtown boutiques. Now, why 3? Consumers need 3 or more to be able to feel like they've shopped around and have the consumer confidence to buy. So we really want to attract 3 additional boutiques to town. Next, full-service restaurants. Full-service restaurants mean that you make an order and the food is brought to you, or you have a waiter or waitress that comes to your table and takes your order. We are currently leaking $12.8 million a year. Now, that's a huge number. On average, when we look at local restaurants, we can easily expect that a local restaurant might only capture 1.25 to 1.5 million. We're saying that our realistic objection there is to create 3 more downtown restaurants. We feel like those 3 restaurants, that is a reasonable capture scenario, understanding that we will always have people leaving this market to go downstate to eat, to dine, to get away. But this will create a restaurant density that will help us to be a dining destination for the region. And then finally, categories that are always important, things like furniture, home furnishings, antiques. Right now we're seeing a very small amount of leakage in that category, 1.2 million. We're not actually suggesting that we go out and find a whole new business. What we are suggesting that we look at the businesses that are currently filling those niches and make sure that they're doing everything that they can to make their square footage work for them. Now, in addition to that, it's very important for us to focus on a concept that we call the economic development sweet spot. That sweet spot really focuses in on a 3-legged stool approach to stable downtown development. You have to have solid quality education, you have to be perceived as a safe environment, and you have to have good, reliable health care. These are the tenets of any solid community, and these are the things that will go and help us drive residential recruitment. Right now, we have a serious issue with safety. We have people who are taking advantage of open space and creating an environment where consumers are not particularly comfortable coming downtown. We need to definitely address that safety issue. Healthcare is an issue that we've got a lot of exciting things happening. Everyone knows about the impending development of Bay Health along Route 1. This is going to bring top of the line technology to Milford and is going to reposition Milford as a true regional provider, and we need to be prepared to take advantage of that investment that Bay Health is making here. And finally, education. A good quality education is not only important for the kids, it's important for their parents, and it's important for every citizen of this community. Those students that we teach now are next year's entrepreneurs. They're the ones that are going to come back and keep our economy viable. We have got to make sure that we are properly investing in education now so that we can reap the dividends in the future. Now, a couple ideas that we have as it relates to that safety issue. One of the big things that we heard over and over again, and we think is a great idea, is we really need to make sure that we have visible police presence downtown. And even though some of the focus might need to be paid in the park itself, we feel like it is extremely important for this police presence to be seen by the consumers of the district. We're actually recommending a common sense reuse of the Santa House. This structure sits dormant for 11 months out of the year, and we feel like a valuable reuse of that would be for it to serve as a downtown police substation in the off season when it makes sense to ride bikes, and also potentially as a downtown visitor center, helping to orient people to what the community has to offer. Finally, from market, one of the big things that directly ties with safety is code enforcement. The community has got some very, very good and proactive codes on the books, but without code enforcement, those codes do the community no benefit whatsoever. We'd like to recommend the concept of enacting a mobile-based platform that we call Citizen Mobile Enforcement. This allows any citizen with a cell phone camera to take an image, report a code violation, vandalism, or any issue that needs to be addressed by the city. And then, not only does it allow them to report it, it allows them to stay in the feedback loop, receiving updates as action is taken on those code reported issues. Now, that creates a pretty solid base foundation with our market information. There's money for us to tap into, and there's room for us to grow. From here, we're going to talk a little bit about physical design. Whenever we start with physical design, it is extremely important to really reinforce and reiterate what we saw and what we heard. It is important anytime you design new elements of a community that you take into consideration what the community looks like, what the local community's vernacular is. There are many, many different elements that are just absolutely stunning. The team was shocked at how photogenic this community is. They could tell that those of us that live here, that drive past it every day, it's easy for us to take for granted how beautiful Milford is. But they were taken from the mix of architecture, the different architectural styles, the different building types, the different presence of flowers and plantings all throughout the community. But obviously one of the biggest things that they were struck by was the river and its role on the community. Not only does the river run directly through downtown, the river dramatically changes as it goes through downtown. Sometimes running through residential styled areas, sometimes very tightly bound by solid canal style walls, other times widening out with natural edges carrying us all the way out to Goat Island. It's also important for us to remember our history. We had a great opportunity to spend some time with the Laughlins, hear a little bit about the Vineyard Shipbuilding Company, and find out about this fantastic history of everything that happened right there on the Mississippian River. But we also know that the space is not activated the way we would like it to be. Many times you can go without seeing walkers, without seeing shoppers. There also are particular areas that, because of the shelter that's been created, it becomes a catalyst for negative activity. And then finally, we have to think about all these amazing amenities that we have, but we have to think about the message that we send when we try to regulate activity that we don't want to occur. Now all of a sudden, you build a beautiful river walk, and then you put a huge red sign saying the river walk is closed. You tell everybody all the things that they can't do, and this sets a tone that disengages people from using the space that you've provided for them. So we want to talk about how we move forward. As we move forward, our recommendations are going to fit into one of two major categories: big moves and small moves. The big moves are going to be the long-term goals, things that might happen over the next 10 or 15 years, while the small moves are short-term goals that we can address almost immediately. We're also going to make some recommendations on overall general enhancements throughout the community. Now here we see our overall master plan image. We see Front Street along the north. We see Walnut, Church, Walnut, Washington. We see the shipyard. We see all the way to the left to Silver Lake, and all the way to the right to the dog park. To make our recommendations a little simpler, we've created 3 general areas: downtown east, the downtown core, and downtown west. This will help us to orient ourselves and orient the recommendations. Our first recommendations are going to focus in on downtown east. We've got several big moves. One, members of the community have been talking a lot about creating an amphitheater and festival space directly on the river. We'd like to introduce the idea of a destination riverfront restaurant. We want to reinforce the desire to solidify the historic Milford shipyard into a regional attraction. Then we also want to talk about a planned development, Riverwalk Village, that should be coming to fruition in the near future. So if we go through, we dig into this area a little, we start to see the amphitheater space right there on the bend of the river. The red building directly to the left of that, infill restaurant. We're showing an additional pedestrian walkway across the river connecting to the open space, which is the Riverwalk Village. Now, as we came into the community, we were greeted with this fantastic plan that had already been created, taking advantage of that bend, putting an amphitheater into that space, taking advantage of the nice sloping terrain there. But there was also a concept to introduce a micro retail incubator space right along the river. Now, it's our humble opinion that this is too disconnected from the core of downtown to truly support that retail. We think micro retail incubators are a great idea, and we've got a position that we think is a better place for them. So what we recommend instead is we recommend the creation of a downtown riverfront restaurant offering riverfront dining. Then that allows for parking to the left that can serve both the restaurant and the festival space simultaneously. Being able to create appropriate architecture for that restaurant that fits into the vernacular of the community, harkens back to a maritime culture, and creates a presence on the community, taking advantage of this fantastic view shed across the river, looking at the historic wooden spoon factory, water tower, taking in all that terrain. Now moving forward, we've got some fantastic structures that exist around the Vineyard Shipping Company. This shipbuilding company has got a fantastic history. It is our desire to see this shipbuilding museum become a true anchor asset, both anchoring the river and bringing people to the community. But one of the big things that we know is for this museum to be able to be successful, we've got to have enough people downtown. That's why we're showing, as we move more towards the core of downtown, some slightly denser development, creating more opportunities for people of all ages to live downtown and truly have a walkable environment where they can shop, they can eat, they can get the food that they need, their groceries, and they can exist in this environment and take advantage of all the assets that we have to offer. We spoke a little about Riverwalk Village. Riverwalk Village has got its own site plan that has been created and revised numerous times. It consists of 4 condo units that align with the river, with parking to the edge. The site plan itself does not take particularly strong focus on the grid pattern of the community that abuts it. So one of the things that we feel like it's important to do is to create a little bit more of an edge so that we can maintain the integrity of that residential community that directly abuts on the other side of Mispillion. Here we see the current edge between the homes on the left and the development property on the right. We'd love to see a treatment similar to what we see over on School Road, where we use trees as a buffer line, creating a sense of edge between those developments. We also would like to see some small moves, things like the Riverwalk Plaza enhancements. Now, Riverwalk Plaza is the home of Abbott's Grill, BB's, Long Shots, Gigante, and numerous other small businesses and services. Today, many of these shopping centers are having to figure out how to compete with downtown models. And one of the best things that they can do is actually extend out some of their sidewalk space, create outdoor dining environments, and the opportunities to truly engage the space better. With this, it actually creates the opportunity for us to create a linear pedestrian node connecting the Riverwalk directly in to the sidewalk of the Riverwalk Plaza. So here we see the current conditions. This shopping center recently was renovated. They got a new top treatment and all the columns had stone added to them, which dramatically increased the overall look and feel. But imagine what it would look like if we extended the sidewalks out, added some trees, and created some outdoor dining. We could achieve a feeling a lot more like this, much more inviting, creating a place that people feel far more comfortable spending time. There are all types of enhancements that could take place, from fire pits to outdoor dining and umbrella space. We even show an example in the bottom left of a national chain that spills their dining out into their parking lot. And in the bottom right, we're showing an example of a very similar shopping center in South Carolina where they took space out of the corner and created a good, ample water treatment and outdoor dining space. With that, we shift over to the downtown core. With downtown core, the big moves, we'd like to recommend something that we're calling River Place mixed use, and also the Centennial Park mixed use. So here, as we focus in on the downtown core, we see 2 main project sites. One is directly off Washington Street, across the river from Park Place and Arenas, on the public property that the city currently owns. Here we're showing infill development that engages the river. This infill development would give us an opportunity to have restaurants, shops, retail right on the riverfront, creating patios, outside dining, and then on the 2nd and 3rd floors, creating a dynamic opportunity for living options, office space, penthouse apartments. And it gives us an opportunity to really create a dynamic sense of place, engaging the river. Everything that we're doing is focusing in on reconnecting with our river. And this development gives us the opportunity to really do that. This image shows the property as it exists today. Here, we're showing what the infill development would look like. The 3-story with the 1st floor dining and restaurant, 2nd and 3rd residential. And then down the road, adding trees, softening the impact of those larger buildings directly on the river edge. But the thing that is extremely important about the density of this development is it creates downtown customers. Everybody that lives downtown will be a downtown shopper. In addition to that, it will extend the life of downtown. Downtown residential at market rates is a key component to being able to truly create a 24-hour downtown. And the more eyes we have on the district, the less problem that we'll have with safety concerns. Now, in addition to that, we're going to move to look a little bit at this property that we're calling the Centennial Mixed Use. This red building is shown on city property directly adjacent to Centennial Park. Now, this is a very, very interesting space. This parking lot was purchased and developed by the Milford Parking Commission, and the city now owns the property, and we have the opportunity to use that to create a catalyst development. This building could go right up to the edge on Front Street, reinforcing the urban core, create a sense of edge with the park so that it feels more like a space, and also creating additional retail so that you have more density in this shopping center to create a higher sense of visibility and shopping opportunity. Now, we have quite a few small moves for the downtown core. The Park Avenue District, the Vineyard Village pop-up retail, Splash Pad, Art League building enhancements, Skating Center enhancements, and Lou's Bouterie building enhancements. So I'm going to go through those pretty quickly. First of all, the Park Avenue District. Here, we have some pretty interesting challenges. If you go down there today, it looks a little like this. Now, one solution that you might come up with is let's bury all the utilities. Unfortunately, burying these utilities are extremely expensive. But there are some ways that we can take this and really make it work to our advantage. By the integration of string lights, you create an intended canopy. So now, all of a sudden, these elements become part of the landscape instead of a detraction from the landscape. And then it creates a completely different dynamic at night. These lights create an artificial ceiling, creating an outdoor room and a true sense of place inside a district. Now, in addition to that, in the parking lot across from Park Place, we're also showing what we're calling the Vineyard Village pop-up retail site. Vineyard Village would serve as 4 small micro retail spaces right along the river, getting shade from the 3 locust trees that are planted there, and being able to take advantage of this fantastic riverwalk and this public space, creating a sense of activity right along the river. This is an example of what micro retail might look like. This is an example from Nashville. Being able to see portable buildings that are 300 to 400 square feet, allowing a business to go in and sell their wares and maybe test their waters in retail. In addition to that, though, right now at night, the Riverwalk is a little dead. And without activity and without lighting, it can be a little scary. But you can understand what the introduction of a place like this could do right on the Riverwalk. Now, in addition, we heard a lot of talk about a splash pad. There was talk about putting it in the park next to the library. There was talk about putting it down on the river. Splash pad, if you don't know what that is, it's a brick plaza with embedded water jets, allowing you to have water features without any standing water, creating a really great opportunity for small children, creating a very low liability opportunity for the city, and also creating an opportunity where when you turn those jets off, the space activates and acts like a traditional plaza would. We're recommending that this splash pad be installed in front of Riverfront Theater. This gives us an opportunity to truly draw people of all ages to the core of our community. Riverfront Theater Plaza is absolutely the true center of town. right where the river goes through Walnut Street, our main street. A couple other elements and ideas you see here. During the winter, this space could be used as a temporary ice skating rink. Again, right across from the Santa House, right in the heart of downtown. One other subtle element on the left-hand wall of Gallery 37, you can see we've simply incorporated a very simple mural element, bringing the brand downtown once again. Now the next couple of renderings are simply showing us some opportunities for building enhancements. This is the Art League building. The Art League building was restored about 6 years ago and has become a truly vital and vibrant contributor to downtown. Unfortunately, some of the block material was not properly primed when it was painted last, so the paint has already started to come off. What we're showing is slight modification to the paint scheme to create a more cohesive unit for the building. We're going to a one color design, creating a more impactful awning, bringing the awning in between the outer two pilasters, creating more of a sense of architecture and being able to allow the architecture of this historic hardware store to shine. These are the current conditions, and these are the recommended conditions. Going one color across the top, having a painted signboard, calling it the Create Building because everything that goes on in here is of creative nature. Adding a couple of gooseneck lights across the top, highlighting the top architecture. Going with a yellow and white striped awning, and you see that awning is brought in just a little. And then going with a deep, rich green along the bottom as a wainscot, really grounding the architecture of this building in a monotone theme. Now we go right down Park Ave and we come to the skating center. The skating center has a lot of cinder block. We would like to make a recommendation that would allow the skating center to better engage with the road and potentially even better interact with its own customers, giving it more space for kids to gather outside as they're waiting for parents to pick up, and also more opportunity for people to look in and see what's going on in this really, really great activity downtown. This is after. You see showing giant glass garage doors that could actually be rolled up in the summer when the weather is good, and being able to create a space that truly connects and contributes with the downtown. And then finally, being able to show a building like Lou's Bouterie. This building has been in Milford since 1843, and it truly serves as a sentinel on the 100% intersection of Walnut and Front Street. This building needs to be loved, and it needs to be brought back to its former glory, allowing the second and third floors to also serve as downtown residential options, high-end apartments, full floor condominiums for downtown. What we did is we took historic photos of what this building looked like before the mansard roof was added on the bottom and before the storefront was reconfigured. So this is the before, and this is what we're recommending it moves to. Traditional colors on a building like this, the trim was always dark, so we went back to a dark, rich, deep green. We went to a taupe base on the stucco. We've corrected all the cracks in the stucco, stabilized the structure, and then we added a cornice along the bottom to be able to reintroduce a cloth-based banner and reconfigure the storefront. The storefront originally engaged directly with Walnut, and we feel like that re-engagement makes a lot of sense to be able to create a true contributing structure in the heart of our downtown, and a building that's essential for us to keep in downtown Milford. Now we're going to jump over to Downtown West. Downtown West has got several big moves as well. The Riverbend mixed-use facility, the Firehouse reuse, Godwill's property, and Warren Furniture property. So here we see the map. If you orient yourself, going down the center of the screen is Church Street. We have God's Way over on the left-hand side of the screen on Maple Avenue. We have the firehouse in the dead center where Southwest Front and Church intersect. And now we're showing a new infill project on the property where the annex is. And we're also showing a new infill building where the former Warren Furniture building was. Now, one of the things that's so very interesting about this particular area is the river takes a very, very different turn along the Riverwalk. It becomes far more residential. It becomes far more tight and close. But we have some very, very interesting uses. Here from this aerial photography, you can see the municipal parking lot behind Georgia House and next to the theater. But then you also see this building that serves like a true blockade, and then a second parking lot that fronts this fantastic Riverwalk amenity. So literally you have riverfront parking. Long term, the state currently inhabits that annex building. They have a 5-year lease on that building, but down the road, we might see this as a true redevelopment opportunity. Now, this building has some pretty interesting elements. Currently, the foundation juts out into the river. You would never be able to build a building like this today. We want to make sure that we preserve this foundation and take advantage of this unique element as we redevelop that property. But now, what we see is we see a development that engages the Riverwalk. We're showing 2 mixed-use residential units along the left, engaging right up on the river, giving you riverfront views. We see an amenity structure out on that former foundation site, giving opportunity to have life right there on the river. And one of the biggest things that we see here is because of the reconfiguration of the property, we now have a centralized, consolidated parking. This parking can serve all of the businesses around this entire block. It can also be designed in such a way that the centralized parking could have a pervious paver material and serve as plaza or festival space. And in the long-term vision for the community, this would be the most appropriate place to build a leveled parking garage to create additional parking capacity for downtown. And when that parking garage is created, you could front that along Southwest Front Street with mixed-use retail, reinforcing that edge and creating a true destination district along Southwest Front. Now, 2 of the properties that we really know we need to focus on that we simply did not have time to dig into too deeply. 1, the firehouse. The original Carlisle Firehouse is a extremely important structure in the life of downtown. We truly believe that enhancements along Southwest Front Street are needed to help justify everything that's going to happen with the firehouse, because the redevelopment of the firehouse will be a massive project. Now, in addition to that, if we follow our way along the Riverwalk, we have God's Way property. That God's Way property is something that is owned by a group called Mobius Group, and they have a long-term redevelopment plan for that property when the market calls for it. That property is going to be a key connecting point in making the Riverwalk work to its fullest potential. So here we see the entry to South Walnut. Now, if you notice, South Walnut is a very interesting street because for about 35 feet, it's one way. If you enter in on the opposite side, you can go 2-way all the way until the Georgia House and Municipal parking lot entrance, but then it stops and says it's one way. This does not really make any sense, and it's absolutely appropriate for this street to go back 2-way completely. It will allow for greater amount of traffic on that road. It will allow for greater exposure to those businesses and those properties. What we're going to show here is we're going to show the street going 2-way. We're going to show appropriate infill development on that Warren Furniture property that's currently for sale. And then a civic structure that allows us to truly denote that this Southwest Front Street is a unique destination district. So here we have before and after. This archway element harking back to the railroad and industrial history of the community. the infill building, showing space for 4 different smaller retail units, and showing how important it is to have additional retail units running right along the left-hand side of that street, helping to draw the consumer down Southwest Front into that district. Now, in addition to that, we also have a couple of big moves across the board. One is streetscapes. If you look at the overall plan now, the community has truly done a phenomenal job with streetscaping along Northwest Front and all along Walnut. For the long-term future, we would love to see that precedent expand throughout the community and connect with additional resources that are essential in creating a vibrant overall district. You can see here the expansion out Northeast Front Street. Northeast Front Street is our front door, leading all the way out to Rehoboth Avenue. It was identified loud and clear by the citizens as being the preferred entryway into downtown. This is how Southeast Front looks today. And with a comprehensive streetscape project, we could welcome people into something that looked more like this. Using trees, sidewalks, bump outs for pedestrian crosswalks that could connect us over to the future festival site, Riverfront Restaurant Space, incorporating in either bike lanes or parallel parking spaces, again, giving additional parking along this area, and using parking to denote that this is a place that people want to be. In addition, you can always use things like tree planting to create connectivity, events and programming to activate the spaces, and facade enhancement strategies to make the community truly attractive. Now here, you can see good sharp edges of sidewalks, but lack of any street trees whatsoever. Where you look in contrast to Northwest Front Street, street trees here have been deployed perfectly, creating an absolutely fantastic environment. Now you have to use the right kinds of trees. What we're looking for is tall canopy trees, not short cherry trees or crepe myrtle trees, the trees that are going to grow and end up stopping right at signage level. We want tall canopy trees. Trees like this that will grow high and have a higher canopy exposing the buildings underneath. We can see the different kinds of tall tree canopies planted throughout. But then we can also see spaces that are in desperate need of additional shade. Park spaces truly thrive when there's shade for people to enjoy. And again, we talked a little bit about picking the appropriate trees. This is a great example in Riverwalk Plaza about how these trees have grown to the size where now all they do is obstruct the view. Had these been taller canopy trees, they would go up and they would actually create a canopy over the parking lot and create some great shade in this development, creating a dynamic that's much similar to what we see here. And in addition to that, very, very simple solutions like creating pop-up restaurants in parking lots, creating just vibrant activity that is under-programmed and just easy to accomplish. And then finally, one of the big tools that we want to talk about is the idea of doing a facade master plan. Many of you are familiar with facade grants, and I'll talk about that in just a second. A facade master plan actually takes multiple facades and redoes them all at the same time. And it does it using an extremely interesting tactic called a facade easement. What we do is we get building owners to sign over a 5-year temporary easement to the city so that the facade of that building becomes public property during that 5-year duration. During that time, the city then enhances that facade and is able to single source all of their service providers, from awnings to signs to paint contractors, and really they're able to treat all of these facade renovations like a single construction project. Here we see Union, South Carolina, where they did about 60 facades all at one time. We can see the overall impact that that makes on the feeling of this district. You can also think about the something that we call component grants. Component grants allow you to focus in funding purely on singular components. Down in Beaufort, South Carolina, they did an awning grant. So they offered just money for awnings for businesses downtown. In these component grants, you could do slipcover removal grants. Here we see on the left a building as it existed with a slipcover. In the middle, we have one of Randy's photo renderings of what he thought the building might look like underneath. And then on the right, we have the reality of what the building actually looked like. It ended up looking even better than the rendering. So here, some additional examples. After that first building removed its slipcover, they had 4 more that took them off. And here you see what that street looks like now. Now, if you remember this concept that I introduced to you earlier, what we would like to introduce as an idea for Milford is for your component grant system for you to create a demising wall component grant. Creating the opportunity for you to create this divider and create additional retail space on downtown streets. So to show what we mean by that, we're going to take this Davis Bowen Friedel building on the east side of Walnut Street. Now, DBF is a fantastic downtown tenant and a great community partner. We do not want their offices to leave downtown. But one of the things that we would love to explore is, what if we could capture 10 to 15 feet of the storefront right along the street and turn those into 3 additional retail bays? So you still keep your office usage downtown, but now you also have additional businesses creating a true sense of vibrancy. You get the best of both worlds. You get the customers and the professional talent downtown, and you get the additional shopping opportunities at rent rates that can be affordable, possibly even as low as $200 to $250 a month. Now with that concludes the design recommendations. We're going to wrap it around with the marketing message. This is kind of like planning a wedding, paying all the bills, and forgetting to send out the invitations. It is essential that we have a cohesive message inviting people to explore and reintroduce themselves to Milford. 5.5 years ago, I had the opportunity to work with the community and develop a brand system for them. The city and DMI quickly adopted that brand and began to integrate it into all of their messaging. In fact, the first thing that it went on were garbage cans in the community. Now you can see this logo and this word type all over the place, whether you're getting electric bills, whether you're seeing projects that the city is doing. You see banners throughout town with the historic Milford Downtown logo. Of course, DMI uses the logo and their identity. And then recently, the school district has even adopted that identity into their logo. We now have a solid, cohesive identity from the community standpoint. But in addition to that, we want to have a cohesive message. And with that, we create something called a brand statement. I had written one 5 years ago. I created a modified version because I felt like some things had changed. So I'm going to read that brand statement for you now. We are a community born of the river. It was the mill at the crossing of the Mispillion that inspired our name. This river was home to 2 centuries of shipbuilding that made us a center of maritime industry. This river inspires craftsmanship. This river remains our link to the vital waters of this great peninsula. Though the nature of the river has changed, it is no less important to our lives. It bisects our downtown, makes us the heart of 2 counties, and is the focus of a rebirth centered on recreation, education, the arts, and creating and keeping a warm community. Our downtown is the heart of our creative transformation. Our galleries, shops, and performance spaces are gathering places for people from all walks of life. Our events allow us to celebrate the place we call home. We remain a center of commerce for a rural community, an escape from the pressures of urban life, and a community centered on family. We are the kind of place where a children's class inspires leaders, a landscape inspires artists, and a history inspires vision. We are the waters of the Mispillion River. We are the families gathered for the Little League Parade. We are the fresh-baked cookies and amazing coffee from a downtown bakery. We are kayakers and paddlers, cyclists and walkers. We are artists and art lovers. We are teachers, students, and parents who are dedicated to shaping our future. We are neighbors, and we are honored to share this special place with you. We are Milford, Rivertown, Art Town, Hometown. So tonight what we'd like to do is we'd like to introduce the concept of Rivertown rebirth. Anytime we do any project connected with this plan, we want to connect it under this concept of Rivertown rebirth. We want to be able to celebrate re-engaging the river and creating a connection with this fantastic outdoor resource. For months, we've seen this hashtag in play throughout the community. We want to continue to stoke the fire of the spirit of community and reinforce the power of being a collective. We are Milford. As we move forward, we want to implement a brand strategy that takes advantage of Rivertown rebirth. We want to introduce the concept of Art Town Alive, connecting arts from all facets throughout the community, and then also firmly celebrating those events that reinforce the hometown spirit with our Hometown Milford initiatives. So we talked a little bit about Rivertown rebirth. Now Art Town Alive. People tell me all the time, well, you know, stuff was going great 5 years ago, but it seems like it's kind of died down. It's died down except for all the entities that you see right now that exist downtown. You've got all kinds of arts going on, whether it's the Music School of Delaware, whether it's Tada Dance Studio, or the Delaware Dance Alliance, the Art League, movies at the Riverfront Theater, Second Street Players, private sector like 37 Gallery 37, Culture Eye, Live Cheap Make Art Studios. There is a vibrant art community that is still alive today. We need to make sure that it's connecting the dots between all the genres to let the arts really sing. We can also constantly keep our images up to date, being able to tweak logos for organizations and events, keeping those identities that are well known, like the icon from Bug and Bud, creating new logos for things like Holiday Stroll, keeping them fun and light, engaging new people. Of course, our St. Patty's Day pub crawl has truly become an iconic event. Eatin' the Street, which is happening on Sunday and in its third year, has truly created a sense of community. A new project the DMI is working on with the diversity mural. A new initiative focused very much on the component grants, like we mentioned, where they're offering free 5 gallons of paint to anybody who buys 5 gallons on their own to repaint their building. And then also, they're working on introducing an international food festival downtown. Creating all of these events and connecting these events to your brand so that they start to deposit positive brand equity in the identity of Milford. Creating a Shop Late initiative. Opening up 1 night a month in the first year. Opening up 4 nights a month in the second year, and then hopefully moving to a vibrant weekend by the third year. Changing consumer behavior takes time, and no one business can do it on their own. So we've got to have a concerted strategy to extend the hours and start to bring consumers downtown again. If you're not open when consumers are ready to shop, then you miss out on that revenue. Being able to have branding that can make its way into private sector development, like we talked about River Place. being able to truly have comprehensive wayfinding signage. This signage system that I'm showing now is completely and totally compliant to MUTCD standards. MUTCD stands for Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. These are ready to go up and would apply to all of the standards of the United States Department of Transportation. And these could help consumers make their way around the community and find all the assets that we have to offer. Now, next steps will be loading the YouTube video. We'll be creating a final report, and then we're going to call that final report down into a one-page strategy board with all of the initiatives that we want to accomplish, and then we will come back to hold an implementation summit where those initiatives get owners and get appropriate deadlines. And then every 6 months, we're going to conduct a Rivertown Rebirth meeting where we bring all of those partners back together and we grade our progress. And we will either give ourselves A's for doing it, C's for working on it, and F's for not doing it. And then we reevaluate and we continue to move forward. Now that concludes what we have to show this evening, but I have one last message. Anybody who watches this presentation will probably fall into one of two categories. One of you might say to yourself, this will never happen. The other might say, I can't wait for this to happen. All we ask is for those of you who sit there, see this vision, and all your mind says is this will never happen. We kindly ask you simply to take 2 steps to the left so those of us that are excited about it can help move this thing forward. All we need is a chance. All we need is the opportunity. We know that there's a lot of work ahead of us. We know that there's a lot of potential stumbling blocks, but we are excited. And together, as a community, we can realize this vision. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.